Hi, Newburgh Free Academy. My name is Ember Beeler, and I'm the director and creator of the Newburgh Project. And I'm going to quickly just show you guys a quick presentation about the project. So a little bit about me. I'm currently a senior studying government and history at the University of Texas at Austin. This project was not a mandatory project required by my school. It was just something I started doing because I just simply enjoyed doing it. But why from Texas? Why from Texas to New York? So I'm a first generation Texan. My mother is from Pennsylvania and my dad is from New Jersey. So I don't have really any documented ancestors in the state of Texas. Everybody from my family lived or lives in the Northeast pretty much. So I started looking into my genealogy on my family history when I was a freshman in high school. And I did this research for about 6 years. And then in 2021, I started to hit some roadblocks because doing online research, you can only get so far sometimes. So what I decided to do in the summer of 2021 is I decided to take a trip to Newburgh, New York, because it was a small side of my family that had some promising leads. It was relatively bite-sized, and it was going to be kind of like a test for me, basically kind of being like, here's where I need to go. This is how much time I need to spend there. And these are the questions I need to be asking in order to find more about my family history. A couple of the people that were involved in Newburgh's history that are in my family were William Stalker, who's my fourth great grandfather. He was on the advisory council for the Church of Our Father, which is a Unitarian church on South Street and Johnston Street. He also had a house on 72 Clinton Street, which still stands today. My third great granduncle, Edward R. Stalker, was a part of the Newburgh City Club. He was also part of the Orange Lake Ice Yacht Club, the vice president of the Democratic Association. He was a firm member of the J.W. Matthews and Company, which was a wholesale grocer on Front Street. He also held stock in the Palatine Hotel Company, and he had a house on 159 Grand Street. When I went there, I found out that I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't spend enough time in Newburgh to fully understand more about my family history, but what I did learn was a lot about the city, which is why I started this project. The Newburgh Project aims to virtually rebuild the city of Newburgh, New York, as it stood before urban renewal tore down over 1,300 buildings and displaced over 800 families in the 1960s and 70s. The virtual model is based in Minecraft to allow the users from all over the world to have easy access to this project. I made a video for my school for a research showdown project. It didn't win anything. It got an honorable mention, but the video does sum up the project pretty well, so I can show it to you guys now.
Newburgh wasn't always like this. I've lived in Newburgh all my life, and it was a nice town. It deteriorated over the years, and nobody seemed to notice. There was poverty, there was slums, and then Mr. Mitchell came along, and Newburgh was just ripe for something like him.
We challenge the right of a welfare program to contribute to the rise of slums.
In 1960, Newburgh's city manager Joseph Mitchell launched an aggressive campaign against welfare, citing it as Newburgh's leading cause of economic distress. His disparagement of welfare led to urban renewal. Buildings were slated for demolition after being defined as slums with a promise to replace them. That didn't happen. Over 1,300 buildings were erased, and more than 800 families were removed, devastated as they watched their homes bulldozed into splinters, never to be renewed. It wasn't always like this. Newburgh is a historically significant city both politically and culturally. Today, Newburgh citizens still share a love for their town and mourn for what was lost. Their community is only now beginning to rebound. The Newburgh Project aims to virtually rebuild the city as it stood before the wrecking balls arrived. To piece Newburgh back together, I have connected with local historians, pored through fire maps, city directories, examined historical photos, appraisal papers, census records, and explored Google Maps. Through this research, I have created a detailed digital map which allows the user to experience Newburgh circa 1940. By using a popular program like Minecraft, it makes it easy for others to access the project, educate, and spark the interest of generations who didn't live through urban renewal. To gain maximum exposure, the Newburgh Project lives on Twitter. The project has gained various notable followers. The Newburgh Project's goal is to raise awareness for the plight of this once thriving city, ultimately igniting a passion to restore the area formerly known as the Jewel of the Hudson Valley. So this is kind of what the project does. What used to be in this spot. This was where the Palatine Hotel was. This is where the Newburgh Free Library is currently on Grand Street. This below is a postcard image of what the Palatine Hotel used to look like. And just below that is the rebuild of what the project has in the game. I use a Google map to keep track of all of my research. I can show you guys here. This is my map. Not all of it is complete. This area here in orange is basically the entire area that I have completed. But you can see all these little kind of like pinpoints all over the map in different colors. And basically how I organize it is everything in red is something that used to exist there, but I haven't actually built in the game yet. So this grammar school, I haven't built it yet, but it used to exist somewhere over here. This is on Water Street. This isn't something I was able to build just yet, but I have found its location. Everything in green is something that I have already built. So right here, this is on Grand Street. This house has already been completed in game, so I label it as green to let myself know that this is something that's already been done. Everything in yellow, let's find a good example here, is something I've kind of sort of built, but it hasn't been completed, whether that's like I'm unsure of what the side of the building looks like or what the roof of the building looks like. It's not 100% complete, so I label it in yellow just to let myself know, hey, this part's not completed yet, and that's something that you need to finish eventually once you figure out what it used to look like. Everything in blue is kind of like a perspective view. So this can include multiple different buildings. So I don't label it as completed or in progress or not completed at all, just because there's so many buildings in these images that it's not easy to say whether it's 100% completed. This is a pretty good example. You can see all these buildings in the background there. It's nearly impossible to say that I completed all of that unless I actually have completed all of it, which I have not. I'm getting there, but I have not yet. So that's how I keep track of my stuff. Organization is key to keeping track of where everything is. In case I have to refer back to it or I'm just not to that point in the map yet, it's something I can refer back to just to keep track of my sources. So the Newburgh project can be divided into two parts, the first part being the actual map in the game, and the second part being the social media aspect. I used to start the Newburgh project on Twitter, which was kind of, looking back, a very bad call because now Twitter is crashing and burning. So I've since then moved my account to Instagram, which includes more informative posts about the locations and the buildings that are in the game. For instance, the Broadway Theater. Basically, the posts are kind of organized with images from the actual game and then images from what it used to look like, what used to be there, with some history on the side, kind of detailing, like giving a little bit of background to these buildings, informing the reader of the significance of the buildings. And at the end of most of the posts, I'll include an image of what the area currently looks like, whether it's still standing or whether it's gone. In this case, it was a fire in 1965 that destroyed the Broadway theater. I also have a YouTube account for the project as well. It currently only has one video. After this video, there will probably be two, but I also have several different playlists that people can refer to. Some are about Newburgh natives, such as A.J. Downing, street videos of what Newburgh looks like today, general resources on urban renewal. This includes like several different documentaries from just kind of urban renewal from all across the nation. It's not Newburgh specific, but if you are interested in urban renewal in general, this is a great place to check out. And I continue to add videos as I find more. I make sure to vet them before I save them onto this page. There's also Newburgh specific documentaries. Those are also great to check out if you want to check out those. Let's see what else we got here. There's also old footage of Newburgh and also Newburgh in photos if you guys want to check those out as well. Those aren't my videos. They're all just created in playlists that I've saved here and are open for anybody to go view. So why Minecraft? Firstly, I just want to point out that Minecraft is not my creation. It is owned by Microsoft. I feel like I have to say that for legal purposes. But the reason I chose Minecraft is because there have currently been 238 million copies of the video game sold worldwide. This makes it really easy for me to not have to convince anybody to download any solo platform that I would create. A lot of people have access to this video game, which widens the scope of the audience for gamers, Minecraft enthusiasts, urban planners, architecture aficionados, and of course, Newburgh and Hudson Valley locals like yourselves. So right now I can show you guys the world and give you guys kind of a sneak peek of what the project looks like. All right, so here is the game. Currently you are looking at the Palatine Hotel that used to be there on Grand Street. I would like the players to start out in front of the old courthouse here, also on Grand Street. You can see some areas where I have little yellow dots or little yellow blocks. That's for me using World Edit to easily copy and paste some of the trees, which you can see some of them are not finished. But it allows me to easily copy and paste things. Right here, this is the Dutch Reformed Church, also on Grand Street. Some of the buildings you can go into and see what the inside looked like. Some of them you can't. I think this is also a question somebody asked. Basically, some of them I have inside pictures for, some of them I don't have inside pictures for, or I have blueprints and some of them I don't have blueprints. So it really depends on the building and whether or not those images or blueprints will be provided. I try my best to try and include the interiors of any building that I do build, and this is one of them that does provide a pretty good blueprint and has pictures of the inside as well. So down this way, this is some of the areas that were destroyed by urban renewal. You can see right there is an old firehouse and an old postal office. There's a lot of like little measurement things I have in different colors. I don't really have a rhyme or reason for why I choose them. I just kind of build them as I'm looking at the images that I find. So some of them are not 100% complete. That's why they kind of look like building shells right now. Now we're going to go back this way. I'm going to take you guys down Grand Street real quick. A lot of this is still here, so this is stuff you guys will recognize. Now we're heading up South Street, and we're going to turn on Liberty here. The game tends to be fairly graphic intensive, so sometimes the computer has a hard time catching up, so I'm going to quickly just change my distance settings so it runs a little bit smoother. And a lot of the videos that I do, I'll actually have to pull the map into a 3D rendering application, so that way it's not as graphic intensive on the computer, because then if I do choose to do that, the game decides to crash and that can corrupt the file. So I do my best to try and pull it into a 3D modeling application when I can, but that takes a very long time to render, which I didn't have the ability to do right now. So you're seeing the actual in-game version, which might be a bit choppy here and there. It shouldn't be choppy during gameplay, as long as you don't set your distance to a lot. It should run fairly smoothly if you are actually playing in the game. It's just when you have a recording application running at the same time, it tends to be a little bit graphic intensive. Still going down Liberty Street here. You can take a look on First Street down there. Trying to make it a little quick because I know we're a little short on time here. But now we're heading up toward Broadway. You can see the Carpellas Museum right there, which used to be a bank at one point. I believe it was built in 1927, but don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. You can see the Broadway Theater that's no longer there, the Armory on Broadway as well. When you get back here, since I'm the only person working on this project, it tends to be a little bit messy. You can see there's a lot of empty backs on a lot of the buildings. I like to call them dollhouse buildings because I haven't completed them yet. But I work on them whenever I have the ability to, or sometimes I just stop because I don't have enough information on what certain buildings look like on certain sides of the building. So that'll sometimes stop me in my tracks until I'm able to find a source to complete the back of it or the side of it or whatever area needs most attention. Still on Liberty Street, right now we're passing over Washington's headquarters. This area obviously is not complete. You can see a whole bunch of blocks randomly kind of floating. It kind of looks stiff and not natural. I kind of work landscaping by hand, which I know is not the most efficient right now, so I'm working on different methods to try and help make that process a little bit more quick, but at the moment this is what we have. This is one of the buildings there. The roof is not on it. I'm still working on that, but yeah, so you can see that there are certain measurements here and there, but it's not perfect yet, and I hope one day when I get a team on board, a lot of these buildings will go faster and we won't have as many buildings that look like shells or look like doll houses or anything like that. If you look down east on Broadway toward the riverfront, they have a whole bunch of like little measurements there from the fire maps that I referred to. Those are just kind of placeholders until I can actually figure out what those buildings look like in detail. This is the YMCA, the Masonic Hall, St. Patrick's Church. More measurements. There's a lot of those sometimes in the areas that aren't there anymore. Right now in this location on Grand Street, I believe SUNY occupies the current space. So I have to find more images on what exactly those properties used to look like. Now I'm going to take you guys on Montgomery Street. You can see the power plant right there with the old chimney stack. A couple of bigger houses that are located on that road as well, like 99 Montgomery Street, which is right there. Again, more measurements. Empty buildings that I haven't quite completed yet. Sometimes you'll see like these kind of like big chunks taken out of the world. Sometimes that's because when I'm measuring, I'll make mistakes and I'll have to like move entire blocks of land in order to fix whatever measurement mistake I made. But those will be smoothed out eventually. This is more of an aerial view. It's hard to do this on the computer because, again, with the graphics rendering, it sometimes doesn't allow the computer to easily fill in what's there without crashing the game. But this is a quick preview of what the map is like. So what are the future goals of this project? Well, for starters, I would like to complete the project. Once that's done, I can open it as a server and let people come and go as they please. I would like to open the buildings and have them designed kind of like a curated museum where they can read panels about what the building's history was, who used to be involved in the buildings, who currently inhabits the building if it's still there. And this will just kind of educate the public and get people to be interested and fall in love with the city like I did. And so here are some of your guys' amazing questions. I was genuinely taken by them. They were very useful, and I kind of used them to guide the presentation a little bit. So the first question was, did she use any special texture packs, or did she just use the blocks that are normally shown in the game? I have not used any texture packs, and I've only used vanilla for this project. And the reason I did that is because I want to try and make this project as accessible as possible, so nobody has to try and go and download texture packs in order to see the game for what it actually is. I do use some modifications. I use Optifine for my shaders mod. This is for me for graphics purposes, for social media. It just makes it look a little bit prettier, but people can join the server while not using Optifine or any kind of shaders pack, and it'll operate just fine. I use Forge to operate Optifine and World Edit at the same time. And World Edit is a mod that just kind of allows me to copy and paste and move things, duplicate things, and rotate blocks in the world without having to do it manually, which again does not affect the gameplay of other people. It's only for my purposes, so it just makes it a little easier on myself. What version of Minecraft is it on? I try and update the game as often as possible, which means I have to go find the newer versions of the mods and re-upload them every single time a new version comes out. But I try and keep it as updated as possible. At the time of this video, it will be 1.20.1. Are all the buildings or do some have any type of accessories in them? I think what they mean by this is kind of like, are there any interiors in the buildings? And the answer is yes. Like you saw in the sneak peek of the map, the Dutch Reformed Church is a building that does have an interior design complete, which can be difficult sometimes depending on what the building is and whether we have blueprints available of them or images available from those buildings. I know, for instance, the City Club does not have blueprints available. It does have some images, but that makes it kind of hard to piece together what that building might have looked like. But some of them, such as the Dutch Reformed Church, it's kind of easier to piece that back together. So yes, some of them do have accessories in them, some of them don't. It really depends on the situation of that building. Personally, I would like to know how they managed to establish a measurement for the buildings only seen by photos. That's a very good question. Minecraft one block typically is about 3.2 feet, which of course, this isn't going to be completely accurate. Sometimes it's a lot of winging it and kind of eyeballing what's on Google Maps, and just kind of measuring it up by what I think might be there. You can see here, this is Grand Street measurements. This was before I completed these buildings. You can see how I labeled different buildings in different colors just so it's a little bit easier for me to differentiate which building is which building. And then I have these lines that kind of stretch to the back there. This was helpful when I was looking at aerial photos on Google Maps and trying to line it up with some of the houses that were behind it, just so I could make sure, like, okay, this building's here, this building's kind of in front of it here. That way it's a little bit more accurate. But obviously it's not 100% true to form because Minecraft doesn't work that way. It's not an exact replica of real life. Right here, this is the Academy Theater. You can see my measurements here. I'll have little blocks in different colors representing windows, and that's kind of how I'll kind of like space it out just to make sure, like, okay, there are 5 windows on the back here. Let's make sure that they're evenly spaced out. Do photos and dimensions translate into Minecraft dimensions? As stated before, yes, they kind of do, but it's very, very rough. I typically kind of like to keep the houses relatively standard. So for instance, I typically like to have about 5 blocks height for each floor, with 1 space for windows. Sometimes if there are 2 doors, I'll keep it with 2. Here's a comparison of a house on Liberty Street and its rendition in the video game. And you can see, like, I tried to keep either 2 or 3 blocks between windows, 5 blocks high, things like that. So there's not a one size fits all, but it kind of varies. However, this model shown here seems to be a common pattern, especially amongst many row homes. How long does it take her to build a building? Well, that's a great question. It really honestly depends. Some don't take very long. For instance, these row homes on Farrington Street, they're relatively standard. They have 3 windows on the side, and they have kind of like a bay window here, some stairs. They're relatively copy and paste, so that makes it a lot easier to build them. They're also much smaller compared to some other buildings in the city, or that were in the city at one point. But bigger buildings, especially if they no longer exist, can take up to 6 hours or more to try and build. For instance, the Academy Theater at Broadway, it's no longer there. It was destroyed by a fire in the 50s. And that took a really long time to build and try to figure out what the roof line looked like, where the windows were, where the doors were. And I can only piece it together by looking at old photographs rather than looking at it on Google Maps. It's also a relatively big build, and it's a unique build. It's not something that you can easily replicate over and over and over again like you can with these row homes. So that sometimes will take me a bit longer. How do I create the buildings? First thing, the easiest way is to look at Google Maps. Google Maps, for the buildings that do exist there, it's really easy to kind of get an aerial view, street view. You can even like do Zoom 3D kind of look around at the building if it is still there to get a good idea of how many windows are on each side of the building. Where are the stairs? How many chimneys are in the building? So that's the easiest way to create the buildings, but that's not always the answer with this project, especially with the areas that were demolished by urban renewal. So I'll often refer to fire maps, as shown here. These are provided by the Library of Congress. This is Broadway and Ann Street. Right here is the Newburgh Armory on the corner there. And so you can see exactly how many buildings are on this corner. And that can help me kind of figure out how many buildings were on a certain street, if they're gone. But I also refer to old photos, either from libraries, historical societies, or just online archives. This one here, the Hagley Digital Archives, is a great resource that I often refer to when building the area closer to Broadway. Let's see if it loads here. This image provides a really kind of detailed look at what some of the buildings looked like. So if we zoom in here, you can see exactly how many windows are on some of these buildings. Like this one, for instance, has 2 windows, but the one next to it has 3. The one next to that one has 4. So this can make it a little easier to try and figure out what the buildings looked like in certain areas. Right here, you can see the train station, which is now the Hudson Taco. But all this is now gone, as you all probably already know. But these aerial views, I think this is from it's from the 1930s. I know that's when this was taken. I forget the exact year. But aerial photos like these are vital to the project because it really does help me piece together what was there and how big these buildings exactly were and what they might have looked like from at least this side, from looking from the Hudson west. And sometimes Google Earth, which is separate from Google Maps, if the house was destroyed after like 2009, I think that's usually when they started putting things on Google Maps. So Google Earth can sometimes help me figure out, okay, if this building was demolished, I can see exactly how long the building was in comparison to some of the other buildings that are next to it. A good example of that is 159 Grand Street. This house was actually owned by my 3rd great-grand uncle. But it was demolished by the Newburgh Land Bank in the early 2000s. You can see some of the images here. This is what it used to look like. Right now, it's just an empty lot. But here is the rendition of that house in the game. Looking at some of these photos, I can kind of determine what the house used to look like, right? In here, it looks like the house is brown, but if you look really closely, you can see that there was some white paint, so I can try and make the assumption that this house might have been painted white at one point. On this image here, if you zoom in closely, you can see blue brackets on a white frieze and cornice, which helps me piece back together what this house might have looked like. It's not 100% complete because this building no longer exists. But I work with what I can or with what I have in order to best replicate what might have been there. Does she do this on Xbox or PS4 or even a computer? Right now, I've been working on my MacBook, which is not the best gaming computer, but yes, I have been using my PC for this project. So it should be the Java version of Minecraft. How long do you think the full completion is going to take? In the beginning, I thought it would take me about 5 years, but here I am a little bit over 2 years in, and it's going to take me much longer than I had originally thought. By myself, this project may take longer, but once I get an established team going, it'll be a lot easier to manage and the building process will go much quicker. Do you have other people working on this project with you, or are you working solo? At the moment, I am working solo. I do social media management, I do research on the project, and I actually do the building all by myself. I am a one-person show at the moment. But I sometimes will work with historians to ask questions about specific buildings, but as for a dedicated team, that's not something I have quite yet, but I am in the works of trying to get people on board, which is a little difficult to do during the school year. So I'm hoping after I graduate, that'll be something that I can focus a little bit more time on. But between all the essays and midterms, it doesn't seem like something I can easily do at the moment. But once I do get a team up and running, which I hope will be in the next year or so, things will go a lot quicker. What was your favorite part about making this project? Personally, I really find it relaxing to try and piece together where the buildings once were, especially if they were demolished. It's kind of like putting together a puzzle. Which I know kind of sounds a little bit weird, but it's oddly relaxing to try and figure out, okay, how many windows were on this building? Was this building placed on this corner or was it placed on the other corner? And it's just kind of fun to try and piece together something that no longer exists. So that's been my favorite part of this project so far. How and when will others have access to your map? This is a very tricky question because I don't exactly have the answer yet. I'm hoping to get it up and running in at least a year or two. People will have access to it by being able to join on a server, so they'll be able to put the IP address into the game, and then they'll be able to click join, and they'll be able to roam around freely on the game. I still have yet to look into exactly what servers would best suit this particular type of a project. But I'm aiming for about a year or two, but we'll have to see what that's like, especially once I get a team on board to try and help move the project along. Has this been done before? To my knowledge, no. I haven't seen any other historic rebuild projects with Minecraft to a similar extent that the Newburgh project has been. However, there are similar projects dealing with urban renewal in Newburgh, such as Urban Archive here, which they do have a phone application where you can walk around streets of Newburgh and actively click on a little icon that'll show you what the building looked like in that area. You can see here there's a little red dot. You'd click on that and it would show you the image of the building along with the description of the building. So there is that if you guys want to go check that out as well, because it's a really neat project. But as for a 3D rendition, I don't know of any yet. So that is the end of this presentation. Thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to follow us and keep up with the project's progress. As said before, we have an Instagram, we have a YouTube, and we also have an email if that is easier for you to get in touch with us. Thank you guys so much for watching.